The True Objective Podcast with Objectivist girl Lauren Rumpler and Liberty.me writer Calvin Thompson. The True Objective Podcast, dispelling myths about our society. Hi guys, and welcome to the True Objective Podcast. My name is Lauren, and I am Objectivist Girl. And today I have my brand new co-host, Calvin Thompson, who writes for Liberty.me and knows absolutely everything about history. Also, we are joined today by special guest Jeff Berwick, and also, amazingly, we have MK Lords as well. So today we're going to be talking about the history of money. So, Calvin, do you want to go ahead and start out the show?
All right. Yeah, sure. So before you can understand money, you really need to understand what came before. And contrary to what a lot of people seem to believe, the barter system is not where transactions between human beings began. The problem with barter is this. If you have something that someone else wants, there's really no medium of exchange. And if there is an item that everyone wants and is willing to exchange in, you have money. So what people are starting to understand is that gift economies were the default method of exchange way back in the day.
Oh, interesting. So basically people use different types of like cattle?
No, way before then. We're talking small prehistoric villages and whatnot where there wasn't much communication with the outside world. Even before livestock was really a thing.
Wow.
Cattle haven't been around for that long in human history. We're talking about just lending people stuff, helping out with labor, and while it might sound kind of socialist today, the whole gift economy thing, what people were really exchanging in was social capital.
Oh, interesting. So what's interesting about that is actually Ayn Rand really understood the importance of social capital, and she was someone who understood the interactions that others had and how this built clout, and this clout made others want to engage because of our positive reputation. In the first half of the 19th century, Alex de Tocqueville had observations about American life that seemed to outline and define social capital. So the power of community governance has been stressed by many philosophers, such as Antiquity in the 18th century, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, and Edmund Burke. And so what do you guys think? I know Jeff and MK are probably very knowledgeable on these subjects because they love money.
Don't we all?
Well, go ahead, MK.
So I did want to add something to your point about reputation. I recently wrote an article for Bitcoin Not Bombs talking about scams. Like I kind of come from the Bitcoin side of things, and it was about certain scams that are going on in the Bitcoin space now. And I was very much putting forth the idea that, you know, reputation is a currency in a lot of ways. So you have to, you know, do your due diligence, especially in this new space that's kind of emerging. We've kind of skipped from the past to the future, I think a little bit with Bitcoin, but I'm going to try to bring it back. But you still have these same social mechanisms in play as far as your reputation goes. So it comes down to before with it, when it was a gifting economy, your reputation was very much based on if you're, you know, are you willing to, fulfill this gift, or are you trading your time maybe perhaps for these gifts, or people were much closer together. It was much more tribalistic, and people's reputations were much more easily discernible too. Whereas now things, there's a lot more currency in circulation. And when it comes to Bitcoin, which is a really new space, this reputation, it's something that needs to be tested. It's something that needs to you kind of need people to, do the due diligence. I can't even speak right.
Due diligence.
And, really determine who has a good reputation, who you can do business with. And this goes right back to survival, too. You couldn't trust someone who was constantly breaking their promises, or maybe you would gift them with something and there wasn't any kind of reciprocity there. Mm-hmm. So you always have to be very careful when it comes to reputation.
Oh,
and,
definitely.
I think that's always going to be the case, too. It doesn't matter what people are physically exchanging or in the cyberspace or whatever. You can be completely loaded, and if no one trusts you enough to do business with you, it really doesn't matter that much.
Absolutely. I think Ayn Rand would agree. She didn't stress it enough, honestly, in her work. But as Objectivist Girl, I've been trying to push the point that, nobody is going to do business with someone that is known as a thief or a swindler. And the internet makes it even more obvious. So, like, it's difficult to get away with doing bad business practice in our current state because of the internet and the freedom of information that's out there. And so everybody's worried about businesses swindling people, but honestly, we operate on social capital, and we are a very moral society. So honestly, I don't see this risk of losing government, because I believe that social capital is one of our highest values in our society. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, of course. The only thing I would sort of differ a little bit is I think we're talking about two different things. Reputation, of course, is very important in the marketplace, and especially more important in a anarchic marketplace, which is what I'd like to see. But money itself doesn't necessarily need to have any sort of reputation. It just needs to be accepted by people, and that's where things like gold and silver and Bitcoin are all things that doesn't depend. They're actually not. There's no backer of it. They are what they are, as opposed to, for example, fiat currencies today, which governments print at will. And in that case, the currency themselves can actually have a reputation, and people can actually lose confidence in the currency itself based on how much they abuse it or overinflate it. And the things that don't have those problems are things like gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And I think those are why those monies are so important and coming back or just emerging now. And we're going to see fiat currencies all go to zero over the next few years as all of these nation states that print them all become completely insolvent or bankrupt. And of course, that's sort of been the history for the last few thousand years, is of talking about the history of money is numerous countries and numerous places have actually used fiat currencies, paper currencies not backed by anything. This has gone on throughout the last few thousand years. I think the first really identified time was in China around 800 AD, or maybe 600 AD. And then around 800 AD, they had another one. They've actually gone through countless ones in China. The US, not many people know this, but it's actually on its third central bank now. They issued their first truly fiat currency, the greenback, by Lincoln, and that actually went to zero. All fiat currencies go to zero. So I think talking about the history of money, it's interesting to see all the things that have gone wrong, and they always go wrong when it's governments involved in issuing the currency. And real free market and real true money is things like precious metals and Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're seeing the reputation of currencies really go through cycle with these altcoins, and with Bitcoin itself. I agree. So, I think that currency has definitely acquired its own reputation management at this point. But I think we've kind of cycled through a period where people depended on money when it first came out. But I think that now that the internet is out, we're relying on both social capital and financial reputation. So I think both are actually at play nowadays.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think money still is a very important part of our life. I think I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to, how you're trying to tie.
If I may,
yeah, go ahead, please.
I think what she's trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong. Money itself, yes, is your reputation is not necessary. However, no matter how much you have, if people know you're a cheat,
yes,
it doesn't particularly matter if you have a lot of money. If your business dealings are so shady that no one's willing to deal with you anyway, then
absolutely,
it's rather a moot point.
That was what I was trying to say. What do you think?
Well, yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would also say, though, that if you're super shady, you probably still can do deals, but people are not going to accept your deals except for if everything is put up front, ironclad, out of the control of that one person. So, for example, if I knew a person was just always cheating people, but he wanted to buy my house for $10 million and it's only worth $100,000, I would still deal with him, but I would be very careful on making sure that I got that money before he got my house.
Yeah, just take it
so
up
I think
front.
they're kind of they're tied together, but they're not necessarily. I think we're talking about two different topics.
Interesting. So I think that those are a lot of good points. So I'm gonna
Yeah, I
move.
think Jeff has a good point with that. I'm a bit surprised at how even in this age where you see all of these frauds kind of exposed for what they are, people are still willing to engage, in business dealings with people or who've been, shown to be engaging in fraudulent activity. But I think Jeff does have a point there when it comes down to, transactions. Maybe reputation isn't so much of a factor. But that would be an interesting circumstance. I mean, in regard to, the example he gave, I don't know. I don't know. Because I do believe that there is a point at which people can be bought too, so reputation kind of, maybe it's not as strong, when money is kind of tied in.
Do you think that's because we feel safety, quote unquote, safety from the government and feel like they'll protect us from any ill business dealings? That's why people keep working with fraudulent companies?
I think that's a part of it, but I think it may be even a little bit deeper than that. I mean, even looking into human nature, I think there's, in a lot of ways, I would agree with a lot of people who say that human nature is kind of inherently selfish. Maybe we're not good or bad, but we're selfish. And but even with that, I think there's that part of people who want to trust and forgive others, even if they're shown time and time again that person maybe isn't very reputable. So I think in a lot of ways we kind of undo that. Like it's hard for us to look at things purely logically sometimes because you have that emotional aspect, especially if someone's very good at deception. The reason scammers are able to keep scamming people is because they're very charismatic. They have certain traits that make people instantly trust them. And unless you can readily identify those traits and know that you're being schooled by this person, then I think it's a lot harder. And I don't think, I think most people just assume that most people are generally trustworthy.
I think that's the case when
Obama.
people are dealing with someone themselves. In my experience, if you tell somebody about a scam that's being pulled over you, they'll be able to kind of help guide you in the right direction. They'll understand because they're removed from it that something shady is going on. However, if exposed to that same circumstance themselves, they might be a little more hopeful. It's like the most convincing lies are the ones people already want to believe.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So I want to move on to, unless anyone had any other comments they wanted to make. No? Okay. Well, let's move on to the emergence of money. I mean, since we're already kind of talking about it a little bit anyway, but let's look at kind of where it started. And I know Calvin had some interesting facts on that.
Well, it's actually something we touched upon just a little bit ago. One of the nice things about money, as you guys pointed out, is it gives you a material mean to deal with shady people. Bartering and money first came into use, as far as we can understand, with people that would otherwise be hostile. Tribes with, not so great relations. Essentially, it provided another means of dealing with outsiders besides attacking and killing them. Now, within societies, let's see, an economist by the name of Daniel Graeber has he's written at great lengths upon this, and what he seems to think is that money within a society was kind of established as a means to qualify credit. So basically it was, I owe you 7 shekels or guineas or whatever, instead of I owe you some vague, unspecified amount that we can argue about and bicker till our heart's content.
So basically, there is 2 different needs that are met, right? So, money kind of came about as to fulfill the need to quantify credit And as demands became more refined and labor specialized, a common medium of exchange became necessary. So I think it's clear that from these two, that money is an exchange of value, and one can easily quantify need and wants, but they can't, but not as easily value. So money allows individuals to quantify value. I mean, just from my own experience, I have a hard time actually quantifying what it is that I want, and money makes that a little bit easier. And
But in today's day and age, here's the problem that a lot of people, especially communist types, they don't like money. Well, when they say that they're talking about money, they're talking about things like Federal Reserve notes and fiat currencies. I don't like those either. They're horrible. They destroy economies because all they do is print up tons of them in boardrooms in secret. A bunch of bearded people, including Janet Yellen, get together in a boardroom and decide how much money they're going to print. And there's no way to know where that money goes. And so what it does is just completely skews the price valuation of every single thing in the economy. And you can never know where it's going to go. And you can't tell which parts of the economy are doing well because of this money printing, or they're doing well because that's what people actually want. So it's really important over the next few years as these fiat currencies collapse, and they will collapse, to get people to understand what money actually really should be. And it shouldn't be something that can be just printed up at whim and controlled by these people who adhere to a form of magic called Keynesian economics to manipulate the economy. And they think that I don't know really what they think. I don't even know if they do think, but they seem to say that they're trying to help the economy by printing up this much money here, or increasing or decreasing interest rates there. All these things need to be decided by the free market so that capital can be used to its best ability. Things like the housing bubble in 2007, 2008, that just shows what happens in these sort of systems where you print up a lot of money. In that occurrence, most of that money went into houses that no one needed or wanted, and a lot of new houses got built, and then they cut off the money supply again. And it turned out that was an area that people did not actually want, but they couldn't tell. There was investors, business people saying, "Oh, look at all this money coming in. There must be a demand for houses." And then, as we saw after that, there was just tens or hundreds of thousands of houses that sat empty because there actually wasn't a market need for it. So the real key thing about money is to have it be something solid and not easily inflated and not easily manipulated. And so that's why Bitcoin is so exciting.
Oh, I agree. What do you think, MK? Bitcoin's kind of your specialty.
Yeah, so Bitcoin is great. I did want to make a point. So there's this layer of complexity that's added when you have government manipulating markets. If you look at markets that are unregulated, you already have a complexity of human action involved. You already have, people valuing things much more highly than other people would value them. So money is kind of a good way to measure that. But like Jeff said, there's this additional layer on top that distorts even that. And I kind of believe that even if you did have government out of the picture and you had truly free markets, I think capital would be more efficiently used. But I think you'd still see a lot of irrationality. I think there are certain things in our culture that our culture highly values that basically, I don't know that there's an objective standard of value for it. Obviously, like entertainment is something that's highly valued. And I'm not saying it should or it shouldn't be. But I do find it interesting. And you hear like kind of people complaining about it all the time. Like, why does a football player make this much and a teacher only makes that much? And I think if you remove the government out of that, you'd see a lot more kind of equality across the board as far as valuation of skill sets.
I think the dog agrees with you. MK.
I think so.
By the way,
Yeah.
those aren't my chihuahuas, by the way.
definitely-
Normally it's my chihuahuas. I think it's Bardley's chihuahuas. I don't know if he can mute his microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Normally it's my fault, but this time my chihuahuas are nice and quiet. So, but just to add to MK's, I don't know if Bardley's even there. I don't know if we can remove him from the call or something, because that's definitely coming from his.
No, he's broadcasting us.
Oh, okay.
So,
But
so
to bring it
I
back
sent
to
him a
Bitcoin,
message. Oh, okay, there we go.
Actually, if I may cut in just for a second, it was something you brought up in Kay. It's a principle
mind.
I was reading about just a couple of weeks ago. I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but the basic gist of it is that the reason entertainers are paid exorbitant amounts of money is essentially because they could quit that job and do something else. Basically, what you're paying them to do is keep doing that thing when other things are more lucrative. You're paying your musicians so you'll still have someone to pay music and not quit that and become a, IT guy, for example. Things that people with, equal intelligence but less artistic aptitude can do.
Well, it makes total
That's
sense if
interesting,
you.
yeah.
Well, it makes total sense though if you think about it. If you have a singer, for example, here in Mexico, there's a guy named Luis Miguel. He can sell out any arena of any size in any city in Mexico for about $500 a ticket, many nights of the week. That's how popular he is here. He's sort of Justin Bieber, but much, much better of Mexico. So you have a guy just one guy and a band in the back, and it doesn't really matter who's playing. It's the people don't come to see the band. He's literally making millions and millions of dollars a night, and he's actually providing every single person, because they weren't forced to go to that concert. They wanted to. Those people decided that $500 is much better used to go see Luis Miguel than to keep in their pocket. And Luis Miguel obviously thinks that it's better use to his time to go and sing, because he wants those $500 more than he wants not to get those $500. So a lot of these things that people bring up about, these people shouldn't get so much. Well, in a true free market, now we don't have a true free market, and this is what MK was bringing up, is there's so much skewing of everything through the government, through the central banks. We can't really tell what's real anymore. And things like football players, they get so much, the NFL gets so much charity or tax from the government to build all their stadiums and all that things. The NFL wouldn't be anywhere near as big without government involvement. But in a free market, it doesn't matter if a person is a singer, for example, and they make $100 million, and they did it all through voluntary transactions. They actually provided $100 million worth of value to the world, to people who wanted that, or else they wouldn't have paid for it. So I think there should be something to be said about why does a school teacher only make this much? Well, that obviously that they're getting what the market thinks they're worth, unless there's some sort of government involvement again, and that always happens, especially in public schools and things like that, where they mostly just use all the money for military and things like that. But I think the topic of who should get what, that always has to be left up to the market, and the market will always allocate capital to the things that the most people want. True capitalism or free markets is a beautiful, beautiful system if we could just let it work.
I know.
think
It
I'm
just
tearing up.
lets everyone get as much as they possibly want. Now they might make mistakes in their life. For example, maybe you went to the Louis Miguel concert, and the next day you're like, I don't think that was worth $500. Well, that was your mistake. Or maybe you can write Luis Miguel and tell him you want your money back or something. But people are always going to make mistakes, and like MK said, there's always going to be small pockets of bubbles and hysterias and people doing stupid things. We're not saying that without government that everyone's really smart all of a sudden. But there would be no massive scale bubbles like the housing bubble or the government debt bubble right now without the central banks printing up so much money. They just can't have these massive giant scale bubbles. You always have hysterias. You always have people losing their minds and putting their money into things that in retrospect turns out to be a bad choice. But we have to allow people to do that. There's just no way that we can just try to rule what everyone does and what the value of everything is. The free market will let you know if you just let it happen.
Yeah, of course, we're not saying that there will be an end to human stupidity, but
No,
what government
definitely not.
does is it makes certain strains of stupidity mandatory for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
So we've been talking a little bit about Bitcoin for a while during this conversation, and I think it's important that we spend a few minutes talking to our audience about why it is that we love Bitcoin over fiat currency. And I think that Ayn Rand's definition of money really, really, really describes how we all feel about it. So Ayn Rand set down several criteria for money, and they were imperishable, rare, homogeneous, easily stored, not subject to wide fluctuations of value, and always in demand among those you trade with. And so when you go down the list, and I'm going to do that real quick, you see that Bitcoin is superior to fiat currency ever since it was taken off the gold standard, which will be something we cover out in the next episode. We're not going to get to it this time. So first of all, imperishable. Obviously, fiat currency can be burned, and it can be, stolen or whatever. So it's one of those things that you're a lot safer with a Bitcoin wallet, and Bitcoin can never actually be destroyed. It can be lost, but it is definitely imperishable. Also, it is rare. So fiat currency can be printed and printed and printed, as we've seen with the inflation by our government, and Bitcoin only has 21 million. And after that, there is no more Bitcoin. Cannot be repeated. You would have to move to another currency. Homogeneous. So luckily, fiat currency is homogeneous, and so is Bitcoin. So basically, all pieces are like itself. Bitcoin can be broken down a lot easier and transferred a lot easier, which goes into easily stored. So Bitcoin is stored on your phone, and if you get enough ones, I mean, you just can't even fit them in your wallet. So I'm going with Bitcoin is much more easily stored. Not subject to wide fluctuations of value. Obviously, since Bitcoin can't be printed obsessively, it's not subject to wide fluctuations of value. And once it's more widely accepted, which goes into the in demand among those you trade with, it won't have these wide fluctuations because it will be an accepted currency at other businesses, and we won't see all of this all of these huge jumps that Bitcoin's been going through. Obviously, fiat currency is subject to wide fluctuations of value depending on how the government feels about printing today, and always in demand among those you trade with. Luckily, or unfortunately, the fiat currency is dominating Bitcoin in this area, which is unfortunate, but I think it's really just a matter of time. So what do you guys think?
Well, it sounds
Yes,
like Ayn
listen.
Rand's sort of took from Aristotle, who said
She does that.
in 4th century BC, he actually denoted the 5 reasons that make the 5 things to make money a good form of money, and those were durability, divisibility, consistency, convenient, and have value in and of itself. So hers were quite similar to that. And just to expand just a little bit on what you had just said, so if you take durable, that's why things like wheat can't be used as money, because you can't just store wheat for 10 years in your house and it still look anything like wheat. It'll be eaten by bugs and it'll go rotten and things like that. Divisible, that's why you can't use things like diamonds or artwork as money, because you can't split them into pieces. So those are just a few of the things. Consistent is another one. That's why gold is a good one, because no matter what gold you have, whether it's made into a coin or made into a necklace, if it's true gold, it's consistent. And same with Bitcoin. Actually, all of these so far have totally apply to Bitcoin as well. Durability, like you said, Lauren, it's pretty much unless the entire world's internet and electricity goes off for extended periods of time, Bitcoin will still exist. And I like to say that if we do lose the entire electric grid for a few years, I think the least problem on your mind will be Bitcoin. And then there's convenience. That's actually one that Bitcoin has a benefit over gold, the massive benefit, because you can transfer $1 billion worth of Bitcoin to China in about a few seconds. Try doing that with gold. And the one that a lot of the people that are sort of gold bugs have a problem with Bitcoin is with Aristotle saying that it has to have value in and of itself. The thing with that is that Bitcoin definitely has value in and of itself because of the world we live in today. We have a world full of governments who want to steal and take money from you and regulate every transaction. So Bitcoin, for just that reason alone, has a lot of value.
So you're saying that its innate value is the fact that it embodies all those other qualities.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's cool.
And I would say its innate value comes from the payment system and the other attributes that it also has. So there's also this potentiality for other apps to be built on top of the technologies. So I think the key with Bitcoin, and I love Bitcoin, but the key to Bitcoin is blockchain technology from which all of these other things can be built upon. So Bitcoin is a currency. So if we're just talking about Bitcoin, the currency, a few points, it does fit all of those qualifications. I think the biggest threat, though, it is perishable in the sense that it's very easily stolen if you don't take the proper security measures. And I think this is something that a lot of people kind of overlook when they get into Bitcoin, but it's so necessary to do the proper research into to make sure that your Bitcoins are secured, because it is very easy for a wallet to get compromised if you don't know what you're doing, if you haven't set up certain measures to protect yourself. So something I always tell people is that most of these hacks happen through email. So they'll hack into your email account and maybe they'll get access to your blockchain wallet. That's probably the most popularly used wallet. What you want to do is set up things like two-factor authentication on your emails and put it on all of your wallets too that allow it. This makes them a lot harder to steal. And then if they are lost, like say you lose that password and you don't have the private keys backed up, those coins are unusable. They've been taken out of the 21 million that will, ever be in circulation. And actually, we're not quite to 21 million. We're about halfway there. Mm-hmm. But there have been quite a few coins that have been taken out of that, which does make the currency more valued over time because it's deflationary.
Stupidity actually deflates Bitcoin versus it inflates the dollar. How is that? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's Rockstar. That is the status of Rockstar, and anybody that doesn't understand that Bitcoin is better than the dollar, they really, really need to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, but an even more exciting thing for me about Bitcoin is the new economy that it's building. So I very much like the ideas of agorism, which is building the counter economy. And because we work in a mixed economy where you have a lot of government interaction with it, it's not a truly free market at all. Whereas with Bitcoin, you're seeing, and they call it like, the Wild West, Wild West kind of economy. But basically, it's much closer. It is an absolutely free market right now. So we're resetting valuations of different things just by transacting in Bitcoin, whether it's, Overstock.com accepting it or, even things being traded on the dark net for Bitcoin, which you're only going to see those kinds of sites grow in popularity, as government kind of tries to crack down. So I think that's the most exciting aspect of Bitcoin is it allows you to participate in an economy that's completely unregulated and that is resetting, a lot of things from just monetary policy to even philosophical outlooks. There's definitely a lot to it. So I think especially for libertarians and anarchists who truly want free markets, Bitcoin is one of the best places to come into and be active in. You're literally building this new economy with this new technology that's very, very, I kind of view it like it's hard for me to even use credit cards and stuff online anymore. The idea of like typing something in, is like,
that sounds like a lot tedious. Of work. I don't want to do all that work.
It's like, I want my futuristic internet money.
Yeah, once you start using Bitcoin, like MK said, you just start to realize how much the other systems are just terrible. I was just trying to buy something. It was like $20 on some website just a few days ago, and they only accepted credit cards. And so not only did I have to type in all my credit card information, they wanted me to type in my address down to the postal code to buy pretty much nothing, like this little thing I just needed for something. With Bitcoin, it's just click, done. And so it's just so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was making a couple purchases on PayPal last night, and I swear, every time I get on that site, I have to reset my password. Ain't nobody got time for that. The more I can transition from that, the better.
Bitcoin, the lazy man's tool.
It's true.
So,
not to mention the PayPal also, I have numerous PayPal accounts. They're just constantly closing my accounts or freezing my accounts.
Spam.
Yeah.
Lots of spam.
Well, just freezing them. I was recently in Havana, Cuba, And because the U.S. Embargo, you can't even buy a plane ticket to or from Havana on
Oh,
a site like
gosh.
Expedia, which I like to use. And there was only one site that I could buy it through, and they only accepted PayPal. And so I did it through there. And in the notes, I had actually my assistant do it. In the notes, it just said for plane ticket to Havana. PayPal froze it because they wanted to see why I was going to Cuba and things like it's
Oh,
just crazy.
man.
Whereas with Bitcoin, as we all know, there's no questions asked. They don't even know you did that transaction.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
why a lot of people have started taking Bitcoin. A lot of controversial nonprofits too, like they froze WikiLeaks' account, and also This is why antiwar.com started taking Bitcoin. It was about a year ago. They found out that they were being spied on by the FBI, like individual members, and they were trying to get donor information. What it caused was a lot of donors to back out. Because PayPal's, you can't trust, any kind of payment system, I would say. I think all of it's very easily reportable to government institutions. So if you're doing something controversial, it's something that can be stopped. Your funding can literally be cut off if you're going through PayPal or if the government scares your donors away. With Bitcoin, you can donate anonymously and you can support causes that, are really shaking things up. Like I love antiwar.com, but even people like WikiLeaks also. So it's great for activism too.
So we've gone through a period where money couldn't be tracked. Then we went to a period of when it could, and now we're moving back to a period when it couldn't. Obviously, we've been shown the error in our ways, but we're going to talk about the definition of money before we head out, because we're going to end this about 9:30. So, Calvin, do you want to talk about our last topic for the night?
Oh, Lord. Well, basically everything from here is just refinement of technology and understanding of money. Money has refined as people's understanding of it is refined. That's why we've gone through so many different mediums in the last few thousand years. It's just certain things are very practical in certain areas and not so much in others. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it.
And we've had several examples of money throughout the years. Cows. What is that?
Obsidian. It's volcanic glass.
Oh, okay.
It was used in ancient Greece because you could make arrowheads and axe heads and all that good stuff.
Oh, man. And tobacco, wampum, and pelts.
Yeah, actually, I was researching for this podcast, and I found out that my home state of North Carolina legalized the use of wampum for currency in like 1720. It didn't take for very long, but that just blew my mind.
All the cool stuff you learn when preparing for a show. What about you guys? You know any weird things that people have used as money?
The funniest thing I've seen recently, do you guys know the show Trailer Park Boys?
Yes, love that show.
No.
Watch season 8. The whole season, it revolves around that Ricky, who always is selling hash or marijuana. He started making hash coins, and he goes around town spending them, and it's just hilarious because it's obviously a takeoff on Bitcoin. But Ricky's, if you know the show, you know what's going on. But it's absolutely hilarious.
Oh, that's really funny. What about you, MK? You know anything weird people have traded with?
So I used to go to a lot of festivals, and there's always a strong barter economy at festivals. And I make hula hoops and hula hoop dance too, which is kind of random. But I've used hula hoops to barter for all kinds of things. I've gotten performances too. Like I think time is a good way to barter. I've done things where I've performed for people and bartered really nice dinners or something like that. Or I traded a chicken for a hula hoop one time, like an organic, farm, pasture raised chicken from my friend's farm. So I've actually traded
like in a cage or prepared.
It was prepared. I didn't have to kill it, but yeah. So that's kind of something that I've used that's kind of worked as its own currency.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, people are always going on about poverty and how the poor can't get out because they don't have money. But honestly, if you get creative, you really can use pretty much anything to trade with anybody as long as you can find somebody that wants it. It is just mind-blowing what you can trade people with because barter is still alive and always will be alive. I don't care how advanced we get in technology, barter will always be a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think whether it's in time too, I think that's something people forget is time is very valuable, and
It
they've
is.
done different currencies back, out west. There have been different like mountain hours, and I've heard of Ithaca hours too, which are like these paper representations of periods of time. So it's like I give an hour of my time to you for whatever service you want to provide. So I've done that with hoops too, as far as lessons, like make a hoop for someone and be like, here's a card for like an hour of my time to give you a lesson.
Awesome. So I wanted to bring up one thing before we close the podcast. Little freak fact of the day. So I'm going to start doing kind of like a freak fact of the week. Did you know how many knew in this podcast that Alan Greenspan wrote an essay called The Importance of the Gold Standard? And those things that I listed were that I got them from his essay, The Imperishable, Rare, Homogeneous, Easily Stored, Not Subject to Wide Fluctuations of Value, and Always in Demand Among Those You Trade With. It was Alan Greenspan. He was an objectivist for a long period of time. Who knew that?
Yeah, I
was
was
a
about
good
to say
friend
he
of Ayn
followed
Rand.
Ayn Rand.
Yeah. So who didn't know that?
I didn't know that was where
Calvin
he
didn't
cited
know.
those facts from. I knew he was a friend of Ayn Rand's.
Yeah. So I've got this theory on Alan Greenspan that he went Francisco d'Ancona. I really think that he was intentionally destroying the economy.
I'm not sure on that one. I think he did believe in those things and completely sold out to the devil for a number of decades. But it is interesting to see now that he has left the Federal Reserve. He's he's always talking about anti-Federal Reserve stuff. So I think he sold out for the fame and the fortune. And he's been bringing up numerous times the last few years that they should just shut the Federal Reserve. So I think he sold out. I don't think he was. If he really wanted to destroy it from the inside, you could have done it a lot better than he did. He destroyed the economy a lot. He destroyed the currency a lot. But who knows? It could be. He definitely has an interesting past being involved with Ayn Rand. He wrote all about gold and its importance right before he became Federal Reserve Chairman, and then he never talked about it again for 20 years until he retired, and then he started talking about it again. So who knows?
I really hope that none of my friends end up with Keynesian disease. It's really brutal. And did you see when Janet Yellen actually came into office? I believe it was People that did an article on her where she stated in the article that she was an open Keynesian. I mean, like you need to be like there are closet Keynesians.
An interesting term.
I'm surprised she even had to say it. It's completely obvious she's a Keynesian.
I know.
Yeah. I'm wondering if what happened with Greenspan was kind of what happened with Rothbard. I'm wondering if he got like too close and just maybe like backlashed from it a bit, and when just as opposite as you. Although Rothbard didn't backlash from objectivism as much, obviously, but yeah, I do kind of wonder if like I don't know, maybe there was a falling out or something, and he just backlashed in completely the opposite direction. I think you see that a lot with people who are really dedicated to a cause and they're really involved in something, and then maybe they just get overwhelmed by it, and whether it's personalities or whatever there is, I think people always have that potential to kind of backlash in the opposite direction. I know I've done it with a lot of different. I mean, I used to be a socialist, so I'm definitely used to like the whole like going to backlash to the complete opposite side. So
Definitely.
yeah, I'm wondering about.
It seems like he was just a natural cult member. I mean, he started out with objectivism, and the less we say about that, the better. And then jumped over to the only cult that's really worse, the Federal Reserve.
I am not a cult member or a cult leader. I do not subscribe to cultism. But seriously, so I'm going to give you guys an opportunity now that we only have like 2 minutes left. MK, why don't you start and tell us where people can find you and follow you?
All right, so I'm the editor at Bitcoin Not Bombs. You can check out Bitcoin Not Bombs. We're about to start our Hoodie the Homeless outreach project, where we'll be taking Bitcoin donations and clothing homeless people. I also work with Sean's Outpost. You can find me on Twitter at MKLords. And yeah, I write for Bitcoin Magazine too. I'm doing a lot of writing at the moment. And I'm also organizing different Bitcoin conferences. So the next one we'll be doing is in Orlando, October 4th and 5th, and it's called Coins in the Kingdom. It's going to be an mostly educational Bitcoin outreach conference, basically, and it's going to be kid friendly. So you can bring the whole family. It's going to be in Disney World. It's going to be a pretty fun time. So definitely check that out. Just look for coinsinthekingdom.com.
Ooh, girl, how do you remember all that? Wearing yourself out over there. Jeff, go ahead and tell us where everyone can find you.
Well, I don't really want them to come to my house or anything, but they can find me on the internet at dollarvigilante.com. That's where I write about my anti-state and anti-central bank ideas. And then I have a podcast called Anarchast, which both of you have been on, Lauren and MK Lords. You're both anarchists. And we're having an anarcho-capitalist festival down here in Acapulco, February 27th to March 1st. And I know Lauren's coming, and hopefully you can too, MK, and hopefully many others, and we're going to have a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of Bitcoin. The whole Mexican Bitcoin community is coming for it, so it's going to be really fun.
I'm so excited. Calvin is eventually going to set up a blog or something, but you can find him at liberty.me. He has some great writing, and I'm really impressed, and that's actually why I invited him on the show, is our personal conversations where he taught me ridiculously awesome things about history, and of course, his liberty.me stuff. And you can find me at Objectivist Girl on Facebook. I do a YouTube show. Make sure that you check that out. Also, I do a live show on the Voluntary Virtues Network on Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard. And of course, make sure that you guys go on right now onto Facebook and like the True Objectivist Facebook page. And make sure that you tune in every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and come check out our show. Remember, guys, knowledge is not for all men, but for those who seek it. So keep seeking.